You think the galaxy's greatest threat is a berserk war fleet or a planet-eating parasite? You're wrong. The most dangerous thing in the cosmos is a single, frustrated human. And right now, on the dusty, forgotten world of Archive 7, head librarian Arthur P. Bookman was very frustrated.
The problem wasn't the overdue scrolls. It wasn't even the raucous gang of Gligan mercenaries currently using the Hall of Ancient History as a bunkhouse, whose boisterous songs were shaking dust from millennia-old constellations painted on the ceiling. No, the problem was the silence from Sector Command. For 3 standard cycles, Archive 7 had been cut off. No supply drones, no communications, and Arthur had just run out of tea.
The Galactic Consensus had designated Archive 7 as a Level 1 preservation zone, a museum of dead civilizations. Humans, newcomers to the starfaring community, were given the caretaker role as a form of galactic busywork. Keep them occupied with their quaint obsession with history, the High Ambassador of the Vox had famously sneered. They sent Arthur, a man of quiet patience, endless curiosity, and a backbone of tempered steel. Arthur loved his work. He knew the location of every data crystal, every etched stone tablet, every fossilized leaf in the vast dome-covered complex. He communed with the ghosts of 100 extinct species through their art, their laws, their grocery lists. It was paradise. Then the Gleegans came, a mercenary company, the Bloody Suns, hired by a rival corporation to loot the archive for precursor navigation codes rumored to be hidden there. They blasted through the planetary shields, which were designed to stop micrometeorites, not plasma cannons. They ignored Arthur's polite, then firm, then shouted requests to please use the decontamination chambers and handle the fragile glyph tablets with care.
They called him soft skin. They called his archive a graveyard. They spilled fermented fungus ale on a perfectly preserved Marathi ceremonial mosaic. Arthur's frustration, a slow burning fuse, finally reached its end. He didn't rage. He didn't cry. He simply straightened his tweed vest, adjusted his spectacles, and walked to the central catalog. He input a command sequence he had theorized but never tested, accessing not the archive's public records, but its deep structural systems. Archive 7 wasn't just a library. It was the husk of the civilization that built it. The Omnis, beings of pure information, who had transcended physical form, and they had left caretakers.
As the Gleegan captain, Grant, bellowed for more ale, the great obsidian doors of the Hall of Ancient History sealed shut with a sound like a mountain sighing. The lights died. Then, in the perfect blackness, points of light ignited in the ceiling, forming not the old constellations, but tactical schematics of the hall itself, with every Gleegan highlighted in pulsing red.
Arthur's voice, amplified and echoing from everywhere and nowhere, filled the chamber. Attention! You are in violation of Archive Protocol 1A, Preservation of Silence. Penalty: confiscation of noise-making devices. The Gleegan's weapons, from hand blasters to sonic grenades, suddenly glowed blue and fell from their hands, clattering to the floor, inert. Grant roared and charged at the nearest door. A previously invisible force field hummed to life, flattening him against it with a comedic splat.
Further violation, Arthur's voice continued, calm as a deep ocean. Damage to Marathi Artifact 77B. Penalty: environmental rectification. The puddle of fungus ale began to bubble and shift, its molecules disassembled and reassembled by hidden nanocleansers into a perfect, if slightly sticky, replica of the damaged mosaic section. The Gleegans stared, their bravado replaced by confusion.
Arthur wasn't in the control room anymore. He was walking the stacks, a living key in a waking lock. He whispered to the library, and it listened. He requested non-lethal crowd control options, pre-Omni era, please. A section of the floor in the Grand Concourse, where more mercenaries were camped, liquefied into a meter-deep pit of harmless but incredibly strong adhesive gel.
Panic set in among the Bloody Suns. Their communications were jammed by whispering data streams of ancient poetry. Their energy cells were drained by unseen drains. They were being systematically, politely, and utterly dismantled by a building and its librarian. Grant, humiliated and furious, managed to get a message out on a low-band physical cable link to their orbiting ship. "The archivist! He's the key! Bring him down! Level the place if you have to!" Act 2. A Lesson in History. In orbit, the Gligan corvette, the Star Scorcher, powered up its main digger beam designed for mining asteroids. Its captain aimed it at the central archive dome. "Burn it until the ground glows," he ordered. Arthur felt the targeting sensors brush against the archive's outer shields. He looked at a monitor, then at a small, ornamental plant on his desk. A resilient Earth species called a Boston fern.
He sighed. "Initiate Botanical Defense Protocol Theta." The Gligan gunner watched in disbelief as the dusty, red plain around the archive dome erupted, not with weapons fire, but with growth. Genetically engineered Omni-era vegetation, dormant for eons, exploded from the soil. Vines as thick as starship cables, tipped with diamond-hard thorns, lashed upwards at astonishing speed. They wrapped around the corvette's hull, punching through viewports and snaking into thruster vents. The ship's system shorted out as bioelectrical pulses surged through the vines. The Star Scorcher became a fly in a galactic spider plant, pulled inexorably down to the surface with a ground-shaking crash.
Back inside, Grant and his last dozen men had broken into the central catalog, finding Arthur standing calmly before the main terminal. "Enough tricks, soft skin," Grant snarled, hefting a crude but effective solid slug rifle they'd kept in a shielded crate. "You're coming with us, or we turn you and your precious books into confetti." Arthur didn't turn. "You still don't understand. This isn't my archive. I'm just its current reader." He placed a hand on the terminal. "And you are overdue." The terminal flared. Holograms of every species that had ever contributed to the archive. Tall insectoid scholars, floating orbs of light, aquatic beings in fluid-filled suits materialized around the room. They didn't speak. They just looked at the Gligans. The weight of 1 billion silent witnesses, the judgment of forgotten galaxies, pressed down on the mercenaries. Their aggression withered under the serene, disappointed gaze of history itself. But Grant, driven by pure spite, raised his rifle. "History can't stop a bullet." "No," Arthur agreed, finally turning. A small, polished stone disc was in his hand. A Marathi soul catch stone, designed to record a being's central experiences. He threw the stone. It didn't hit Grant. It shattered at his feet. A wave of light and sensation erupted. Grant didn't feel pain. He felt a life. He experienced the 70-year journey of a Marathi stone carver, her joy at finishing a masterpiece, her love for her clan, the quiet satisfaction of a life spent creating beauty. He felt the despair of their entire world when their sun went nova, and the hope they placed in sending their soul catches to the archive. For 5 seconds, Grant lived a good, full, gentle life. The rifle fell from his hands. He was weeping, great heaving sobs, overwhelmed by a profound sense of loss and shame.
His men were similarly affected, each by a different artifact Arthur had subtly activated,
a Krellian harmony crystal, a luminous drift light sculpture. They were disarmed not by force, but by empathy. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the archive was still cut off. The corporate backer who hired the Gleegans would send others. Arthur knew he had to make a statement. He had to remind the galaxy what humanity fuck yeah truly meant. It wasn't about being the toughest or the loudest. It was about being the keepers, the ones who remember, so others don't have to repeat the same mistakes. He accessed the deepest core of the archive, the Omni's final gift, a single galaxy-wide burst transmitter. He began to curate a message. Across the galactic consensus, every communication hub, every ship's console, every public view screen flickered. The seal of Archive 7 appeared, followed by Arthur, looking slightly rumpled but determined. "To the galactic consensus," he began. "This is head librarian Arthur P. Bookman of Archive 7. Our silence was not an invitation. You sent thieves to rob the graves of your ancestors. You have forgotten why we keep the past." He didn't show the Gleegans captured. He showed the Murathi mosaic, whole and beautiful. He showed the captured mercenaries, now under the watchful eyes of historical holograms, carefully repairing a wall they had damaged, learning the stories behind the stones they handled.
"You think humanity is weak because we cherish what is gone," Arthur continued, his voice gaining power. "But you misunderstand. We don't live in the past. We carry it. And in this archive, we carry yours. The Omnis left this place for all of us. Its final defense isn't a weapon. It's a question. Are you worth remembering?" Then he played his trump card. He transmitted a single, deciphered line from the rumored precursor navigation codes. It wasn't a star chart. It was a coordinate, paired with a timestamp. A location of a still-functioning Omni-world ship. A treasure beyond imagining, set to awaken in a century. The key to accessing it is not a code. It's cultural continuity. It's proving you have grown from your history, not plundered it. Archive 7 holds the first clue, and it is now under the protection of humanity. We will teach anyone who wishes to learn, but we will stop anyone who seeks to steal. The signal ended.
The reaction was instantaneous and seismic. The corporate backer was disavowed, his assets frozen. The galactic consensus, shamed and awed, apologized profusely. Ships not of war, but of scholars and diplomats, descended on Archive 7. They found the Gleegan corvette covered in now flowering vines, being studied by fascinated xenobotanists. They found the Bloody Sun's mercenaries, still in custody, but now arguing with a holographic Vox philosopher about the ethical implications of their career choices. And they found Arthur, in his restored reading room, finally brewing a fresh pot of tea sent from Earth. The Vox High Ambassador himself, humbled, approached Arthur. "Librarian Bookman, your actions, they were long overdue," Arthur offered, handing him a cup of tea.
The story spread, not as a tale of human martial prowess, but of human stewardship. The galaxy saw that humanity's obsession was not a weakness, but a terrifying strength. They could wake ancient guardians. They could weaponize wisdom and win wars with empathy. They were the guardians of the galaxy's memory, and they took the job seriously. Arthur was offered a promotion, a seat on the Consensus Council. He declined. He had weeding to do in the new Xenobotanical Gardens, and a class of newly arrived gelatin scholars from Flu Prime were waiting for their introductory tour. They were particularly interested in Earth's Middle Ages, which they found delightfully messy. As the sun set over Archive 7, now bustling with peaceful visitors from 100 worlds, Arthur stood on a balcony. A young human assistant, newly assigned, stood beside him,
watching a group of former Gleegan mercenaries, now wearing apprentice curator badges, help a delicate Frondian archaeologist unpackage a new artifact. "Sir," the assistant asked, "what's the protocol if someone tries something like this again?"
Arthur sipped his tea, a gentle smile on his face. He looked at the thriving, peaceful archive, at the diverse beings learning and sharing together. He looked at the dormant, vine-covered hall of the Star Scorcher, now a permanent exhibit titled The Folly of Forgetting. "The same as always," Arthur P. Bookman said, his eyes glinting with the light of 1 billion preserved stars. "We remind them of their history. And then, if necessary, we give them a new one to remember."